Hello and welcome to Circle Back. I am your host, Sam Davidson. I'm the CEO of Nashville Entrepreneur Center, coming to you from the Chase studio. In this latest episode, I have a conversation with Mignon Francois, known as the founder of the Cupcake Collection. We talk about her growing up and her background and how hard it was to get that business off the ground, which may not seem like it given all the success she has had lately. We also talk about her new book, which is on shelves now. I hope you enjoy this conversation, brought to you as always by the Beth and Randy Chase Family. And be sure to subscribe and learn more about Circle Back at ec.co/circleback. Let's give it a listen. Welcome to the latest episode of Circle Back. I'm here with Mignon Francois, who's an entrepreneur, an author. We're going to get into all of this, but first, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
So first question I ask everybody, talk to me. Who was the first entrepreneur you remember knowing, maybe that you ever met, or what did entrepreneurship look like when you were young or growing up?
Yeah, I didn't know that entrepreneurship was a thing. My parents worked really hard at jobs my whole entire life and required that we do the same thing. As a matter of fact, when I first decided that I was going to be an entrepreneur, I dared my children not to tell anybody because my mother would have been on the first train smoking to Nashville, Tennessee to pick up her grandchildren and get them out of this foolishness I was in. But I think I always did see business. My father was an entrepreneur. He had an amazing side hustle in which he gave a lot. He probably gave as much as he made, being a carpenter and a roofer along with his brothers. So I think my first example would have been seeing my father do side jobs for people after he got off of his regular job. But I always got to see it. My aunt owned a restaurant. Another aunt of mine had a snowball stand. And so I was surrounded by it.
And did that play, in retrospect, of course, but even as you were younger, did that play into anything in your mind of like, oh, I can do that, I should do that, maybe I want to do that?
Yeah.
When you were growing up, what did you think you were going to be when you grew up, or what did childhood look like?
I love this question. I thought I was going to be a doctor when I grew up. I couldn't apply the science to the human body, so I was flunking out of my science classes. However, I, as a child, never liked to play with dolls like most girls. I like to play business.
Excellent.
So I was always the manager of the branch or the one like giving out the money. And so I would go knocking on doors of my neighbors. I would try a recipe of cookies, these greasy cookies in a bag. I was selling at my neighbors' houses and lemonade and those kinds of things. So I think I was, like I said, I was always surrounded by business. My mother was always making something for somebody. She was always in charge of creating an event or a program or things. She never got paid for those things. It just was her heart to give. And so I think I've always seen it, and I always wanted to be a lot like my mom. And so because she was always managing and leading, that was what my play looked like. So I think I was always intended, somehow meant to be in business.
And so then what happened between then, when you saw that, when you were playing business as a kid, until you became an entrepreneur and started your own business? Talk to us a little about where you grew up, how you grew up, and the steps that led you to starting that first business.
Yeah. I'm from New Orleans. I believe there's no greater place in the world to be from. It just drips off of me that I proudly say, if people ask me my name, I say, oh, I'm from New Orleans. And it's like, it explains it all. And I grew up in a very devout Christian household. We were not allowed to bring anything but A's and B's into the household. And I went to college on a scholarship at 17 years old. I turned 17 on the campus of Xavier University. Wow. So I started out really early, but nobody ever really prepared me for what college was going to be. I was only the second one in our family to go to college. My brother was the first. I never saw it. I didn't know what it was. So I just kind of was picking what was acceptable in our community. You can be a doctor, a lawyer, or a teacher if you want to be successful. And so I chose to be a doctor, but my heart was always to be a writer, I think. I always dreamed of sitting behind the anchor desk and reporting the news, and I got to do that for a little while. But it was in college, second semester, I got pregnant. And so now I have to change my major. I got to figure out what I'm going to do to take care of this little baby that I have. And my mother required that I take care of my baby. Not that it was like a really twisting of the arm type thing, but I took my baby everywhere I went. And if I wanted to give him a life, if we were going to have any semblance of a life that my parents had created, I was going to have to do something faster than being a doctor. In the process of changing schools and changing majors and all that kind of stuff, I met my husband, who I was married to for 21 years. And he had been doing business. I had run a lot of his business. I learned how to file taxes. I learned how to do paperwork. I created an amazing resume for myself supporting his businesses. But it was when I finally did graduate from Houston Baptist University in Texas that I launched out on my own as a photographer. And seeing how people enjoyed the product that I was offering made me want to do that more. And then having the freedom that the contracts brought. Then fast forward, moving to Nashville, Tennessee, it was hunger. Needing to make ends meet and needing to help our family get from where we were to where we wanted to be, that I decided to follow what the man on the radio was saying, and that is have a bake sale. Problem is, I didn't know how to bake. Not even out of a box.
So tell us, though, what happened in between? So that went from photography business, post-college. What did, right before you heard that man on the radio, what did your family look like? How did you get to Nashville? Tell us, fill in a few more of those details.
We were drowning in debt and brokenness. We were losing everything that we had. We came to Nashville for a better life for our children. Soon as we got here, a recession sort of hit, and we being in the construction industry, this was not the greatest time to be a person who fixed and, flipped houses. I have 6 children at the time. And some days they had to miss school because it was a decision to eat or put gas in our car to get them to school before those got repossessed. I mean, we had a tumultuous life. Did I answer you?
You did.
Okay. And
then you heard this man on the radio say, start a bake sale. That's all it took to go from tumult to where you are now. I imagine it wasn't quite
I was
as
gonna say
linear.
It wasn't that
That's right.
simple.
That's right.
Yeah.
But what was it about that message to say, let me try a bake sale? Again, not knowing how to bake, which we're going to talk about.
Yeah.
That was at least compelling enough, or was there just no other options? Or talk to us about that moment where you said, all right, let's maybe try it.
I was listening to the joyful sound of the people on the radio screaming, we're debt free.
Yeah.
And the rumble. And I remember that speaking to my soul, like that, the principles that were being taught on that radio show, what my parents had raised me on. And what am I doing here in this situation where I have no money? This is not God's best for my life and what I'm supposed to be having. And I wanted out. I wanted out of lack. I wanted to have for my children what all the other kids had, and that was field trip money. And so initially, this all began for field trip money because I had a senior in high school at the time, and I would always have to be the room mom so that my children could go on the events so that somehow they wouldn't have to bring a lunch or buy the lunch out that I couldn't afford, but maybe I could get around packing them something. I think that people don't really realize what working for food really does look like, because that's what we were doing. We were literally working for food,
How
going
long?
to
How long were
jobs.
you in that state of lack, would you say?
I would say for 21 years. It was when I got out of that marriage that God opened doors for me through what was the Cupcake Collection, that I began to really have the say for my own life. And I started making moves and decisions that were valuable for not only me, but also my legacy.
And you heard this voice on the radio, have a bake sale. Were there other voices that were like, no, don't, you can't. This is all you know for 21 years. You're going to have 21 more years of this. Who are you to try this?
Never. I never believed that I couldn't. I had a mom that was an amazing cheerleader. She cheers for the opposing team as well. And so she always told us that we were Terrios. That was my former name. And she would always say, don't forget when you go out there in the world that you're a Terrio. And basically what that meant, you represent our family, our name, our household. You better act like it. And so I never believed I couldn't. As a matter of fact, when I was younger, I always knew I was going to be famous. I didn't know what for. And so I remember telling my mom, I'm going to be famous. And she said, for what? I said, I don't know. She said, well, just be famous, baby. But I believed that God didn't waste this fabulous name that I have on nobody knowing it. So I wanted to do my due diligence to make my name great.
And you heard have a bake sale. You had no baking capabilities.
I burned the bread. Like the box brownies came out like crackers when Mignon was involved.
So what were you going to do? How were you going to have a bake sale then?
So I had these two awesome daughters who were baking all the time. And I thought they can bake at night when they come home from school, and I will sell it in the day. Well, soon after we got started with the idea, my oldest daughter let me know, I'm really not interested in your little bakery idea, Mom, and I'm going back to New Orleans as soon as I graduate. And without her, my youngest daughter is not interested. So I got to learn how to bake. And I pulled from my past. And I believe that there are no mistakes. Every stupid thing you've ever had to do is taking you from where you are to where it is that you want to be. So I went back to those classes, those science classes. It was with my grandmother's recipe, which I loosely say recipe, right? Because grandmas like mine don't really have written recipes. Right. And she had said, open up your hand, pinch this much, put your measure to the first line on this finger. And I did that, and I got like a mess of a thing. But I realized in reading what my grandmother had instructed me to do, that there was no balance to this. And it came to me that this was science, that this was what I couldn't apply 17 years earlier. And if I would recognize these things as being elements on the periodic table, I could manipulate them to do what I had learned in school. And the concept that I did catch was that when they combine with other things, new things are created. And so that I can manipulate these things to be however I wanted them to be. And I made my first recipe that way. And it was from there that I would go out and see strangers coming into my Germantown neighborhood. And I would say, hi, I'm Mignon Francois. I live in that purple house across the street. See where it says bakery coming soon. I'm practicing on my recipe. My family says it's good. I don't know if they just love me, so I'm looking for strangers to taste it. I wondered if you will too. And they would taste it. And I would be in awe because I wouldn't eat from nobody that I don't know, because in New Orleans, we just don't do that. But they would take it and they would offer me money on the street for the rest of everything that I had. And I knew I had something as I would go out into the street. They'd tear down one house, put up 15 houses. Those were my customers.
And how long was it between when you heard the radio message between when you were able to officially open the doors?
2 years.
2 years.
I worked every day like it was a job for 2 years before my store ever even opened.
And never any doubt that this was the next step or the path?
Oh, I had doubts in myself that it was going to work. But again, I was looking for field trip money. I wasn't looking for this. I wasn't expecting that this would be my avenue to being known in the world, to be called a renowned baker, like being called a celebrity baker. Oh my gosh, who me? Like, I never thought that this was going to be the avenue.
And when you opened the doors officially, then what happened?
Nobody came.
No, it's supposed to be there's a line down the street.
Nobody came. I thought that I had told the world. I put a little 3x3 sign out on the porch. I thought I told the world. On our first day, we had called all the people we knew, and they called the people that they knew. And so we had a very big first day, and then people forgot, which I hope some entrepreneur who's just starting out will hear this from me. It is your job to be preaching the gospel of your product so that others will go and tell about the service they received from you or the problem that you solved for them. And I just thought that if they experienced me once, that they were going to come back. And I think they just forgot. I think they forgot that they had something great. I think they forgot that I was there. And to this day, I carry coupons around in my purse. People say, you got any cupcakes in that purse? And I'm just like, I do, in fact.
Redeem.
And I give them a redeemable opportunity to go to my store and grab a cupcake on me.
Still, after the success and the multiple locations, still handing out coupons.
After 16 years of those doors being open in November, I'm still doing what I did that worked for me in the beginning.
So what are some of those things that worked in the beginning? Because I've heard you talk about, let's call it marketing, what you're talking about, getting people there. I've also heard you talk a lot about how you wanted to set up the business in terms of paying your people, paying your vendors. So talk to me about that, because especially we can see or hear a lot of people say, oh, once I'm successful, once I hit $1 million, once I hit profitability, once I hit another location, 10, whatever those benchmarks are. But talk to us about those very early days when it was very hard, when there wasn't a line around the building yet, there wasn't a wait list, there wasn't sellout days. What were some of those fundamentals that you wanted to make sure you focused on, both internally and externally?
Yeah, I always wanted to make sure that this is a Bible verse: render unto Caesar what is Caesar's, right? I always wanted to make sure that I paid my bills and I paid my taxes. And so I would always separate out that money in envelopes. So I had an envelope system that I learned from Dave Ramsey in order to, get out of debt and have an emergency fund. I used that same envelope type system to run my business in the beginning. And so I feel like it went from envelopes to bank accounts. So instead of having an envelope for taxes and an envelope for supplies and ingredients and savings or profit, I now have bank accounts with those same sort of labels on them. The labels have become more sophisticated,
Sure.
But we have essentially 5 bank accounts to always secure a rainy day, an umbrella for a rainy day. And then we were always in a position of secure cash flow. I looked again to the past to inform the future. So I looked at who made it through the Great Depression. And I looked at what they did. And those people who had a cash-rich position are names that we still recognize today as being giants in the market. And so I always protected our cash flow, always hugging my customers. I wanted customers to know that I saw them and they could get as many hugs as they could get cupcakes of the Cupcake Collection. We celebrated what they were celebrating. And so then through the pandemic, we told them that the celebration is still on. So we learned that we were hit by 2 storms, a tornado and COVID within days of each other. And as people were climbing over trees, literally, to get to our house, they didn't know that we were affected by this storm. And a little boy was on the street, and he didn't understand that there was no cake in here when it is my birthday. And so we understood that a 9-year-old needs a birthday cake, no matter if it is COVID.
Yeah.
And so we started a campaign that says the celebration is still on. So I think it was being a part of the community. And a lot of people say, oh, yeah, they'll come into my store all the time. I know Mignon. And my team is like, so do I. Because a lot of people feel that knowing because of the interactions that I have with people, to look them in the eyes, to ask them about their stories, to remember their experiences, to remember sometimes just their faces. And I think having had children that grew up in this community has helped to solidify some of that too. So I think those are some of the things that worked.
And how you mentioned the word community, and we're big believers here that community matters. Entrepreneurs are better together. So what are some, you mentioned hugs, you mentioned making sure the celebration continues, being visible as a business owner. What are some of those other things that worked for you, especially being a neighborhood business that you knew you couldn't overlook as you grew?
Yeah. So the word community is part of our core values. So we have our core values spell out the word circle, because everything that we do happens in a round shape, even even the product is round. What we sell at the Cupcake Collection has nothing to do with what you take home. So you take home cupcakes, but what we're selling is joy. We're selling an opportunity for you to come in and lay your burdens down, sink them into a piece of cake that takes you back to a time and place where somebody made you something with love. Because it takes time to make cake, right? I can't just up and say, you know what? I forgot your birthday, but I'm going to bring you a cake, right? There has to be time and thought put into that. And so the way that we care for the process by which we care for people in the ingredients. Our strawberry cupcakes are pink like that because of strawberries. Like, there's not dye in my strawberries, in my strawberry icing. And so I mix the chocolate. Like, I select chocolate and I mix chocolate for my chocolate cupcakes. Our red velvet cake is not a chocolate cake with red dye. That is not what red velvet cake is supposed to be. And so I think those little bits of attention to detail, when you break open a strawberry lemon cupcake, you're going to get that punch of sweet lemonade, but you're also going to get hunks of real strawberries on the inside. But the thing that I'm really most proud of probably is our sweet potato cupcake. It points you right back to my Louisiana heritage, right from New Orleans, Louisiana. And people are always so surprised by it when they eat it. And I always say it is a Cupcake Collection original. If you ever meet another sweet potato cupcake, it wants to be this one.
Right.
And so it's the lineup. It's the lineup of flavors that stay true to my heritage and where I'm from. And then finally, that coconut cream that is a sleeper on the menu reminds me so much of my grandmother. And it's one thing that I did that she was super proud of. She felt like, of all her children, I was the one that captured the essence of who she is in a cake. And so just knowing that I'm never going to feed to my customers anything that I'm not willing to eat myself or give to my children. And so while some developers won't let their own children experience what they create, I'm not going to give you what I'm not willing to serve to my own family. So we're just very intentional about, even as we grow, each of our stores are baking inside of them, because we want to keep those small batch community, small circle type moments together. But so what we're selling is not just all of, that product I just described, but it's the joy that you feel when you taste that, and it takes you back to, I remember when I sat at my grandmother's table.
Yeah.
And I would call her and say, Grandma, I'm on my way. And she would say, what kind of cake do you want? And I would say, I want coconut cake. And there would be coconut cake when I got there. Half eaten usually, because
sure.
my other
That's
cousins are
Yeah.
going to the kitchen. But she's making sure that I have something. And that's what I want to do for other people. I want to take them back to a time and place when something was made with love. And I think sometimes that's missed in our fast-paced world. This is an opportunity for you to slow down and to get something made well, made with authenticity. What might have been sliced at an old-fashioned table now comes wrapped in a little paper liner so that you can hop in your car as you're rolling off to the next thing you have to do. I know that was the long way around that answer, but
But all these elements, all these touch points, they make your business unique. They make it meaningful. They make it memorable. So throughout this process, early on, say halfway through today, for you, were these touch points something that you would call good for business, or good business? So were they allowed you to have the financial gains and wins, or it was baked into the DNA of the company itself, a little of both?
Yeah, it was good business. I didn't know it was good for business. I just happened to, like, business happened to me. I was just a stay-at-home mom who was looking for a way to provide field trip money for my own children. I didn't know that I was going to start scholarships. I didn't know there would be scholarships in my name one day. I didn't know that I would have special flavors that would raise money for other kids to go to school and walk across the stage because what I did for them made ends meet. I didn't know that was what we were going to do. I didn't know that we were going to provide career opportunities for people. I didn't know that I was going to be teaching other young people how also to be in business. Because one of the things that we teach at the Cupcake Collection is I'm not your boss. I am your client. So everyone on my team knows that they are a business of one. So while they may have only one employee and one client, that's themselves and me as the Cupcake Collection, they steward over that like a full-fledged operating business. And I'm teaching business principles to them because as they climb the ladder of success, I want to be holding the ladder at the bottom, safely saying, you're not going to fall because I caught you. And when they leave the Cupcake Collection and go on to the next thing, they leave and do other successful things when they leave right. Because I'm going to make sure that they're taken care of wherever they go.
So you didn't think you were going to start scholarships? You didn't think, did you think you were going to be an author?
I always knew that it was inside of me to write. I had been told that my whole life, but I didn't know I would get a #1 in new releases on my first one out the gate. So that's exciting. I'm still trekking towards the New York Times bestseller list. I believe that'll happen one day, but I didn't know it was going to be this book. This book did not show itself until I finished it. I didn't know what I needed, and there have been so many people, Sam, that come to me and thank me for this book, who didn't know what I was going through, who didn't know what my life looked like as I smiled through it. And there's something I would say, go the extra smile. I think that people don't always know what it is that you might be going through, but at the same time, we all have something, and I don't need to put my problems on you. So when you come in, I just want you to have a place to be able to lay those things down. So in this book, I was able to tell my story of how I get from where I am to where I want to be. And then I give people a sort of playbook that they can use to take them on their own journey. I'm hoping to teach them how to write their own made from scratch story.
So the book, Made from Scratch, Finding Success Without a Recipe, you mentioned your story. Obviously, this book is the culmination, and it just serves as a waypoint where you're putting words on pages and it packages it right here. But you're someone who's told your story in other forums and other venues long before the book published, whether it was one-on-one, whether it was interviews, but also speaking and just wanting to tell it. So what is it about being a business owner, how you have been a business owner, that compelled you to want to share that story and not hoard it in order to maximize your own bottom line?
That is such a good question. I didn't have a lot of examples of what it meant to have ownership. I am the daughter of a man who was born on a sugarcane plantation. And I had to learn on the fly how to do good business. And so I decided a long time ago that I want my business to represent being a lighthouse in my community, to show other people what good business looks like, and then to light the way for other entrepreneurs to know what they could do if only they believed. I promise God, if you will make me successful, I will tell anybody who will listen about what they can do if they believe. And so this has just been about me keeping my promise to God. So writing this book just let me have access to more people. If they're on the other side of the, pond, and it's it's tomorrow or it's yesterday, I can be with them whatever time of day that it is. And I've been able to connect with women all over the world, especially now that this book is available. And people saying, thank you for helping me to be unapologetic about what it is that I'm supposed to do in the earth. And so it's giving other women permission, other moms like me who were staying at home, or other moms like me who were working to make ends meet, to have permission to start that thing, the business, the idea, the training, whatever it is, just to begin right where you are. And I think that writing this book has been a tool that a lot of those women are finding hope in.
And talk more about that demographic or that category of business owners. You're working and coaching with them now. Talk to us about that addition, because I think if Mignon's about anything, it's about this idea of growth. It doesn't seem to be stopping. And so the business growing, multiple locations now, but you growing as a speaker, an author, now a coach.
Yep.
Why move in that direction? What is it that has called you there? It seems to be that this is a calling for you, and driving some of that. When you could just forget all this, let me just keep adding Cupcake Collections that make it a global brand.
Yeah, that's my new goal. It is a calling. I believe my life depends on it. I remember I was being awakened at 3:17 every morning. I talk extensively about that in this book. And I would watch TV, and the man on TV was saying, the morning breeze has something to tell you. Do not go back to sleep. Now, I don't know if you picked up on this, but I'm a perpetual student. If you don't want me to know how to do it, don't let me see it, because I'm a visual learner. And I got up to hear what the morning breeze had to say, like, what is this one? And so I began to get my first instructions at 3:00 in the morning. I heard God speak when I picked up a Bible, opened it to wherever it fell. And because I was waking up every single day like clockwork at 3:17, I decided to look in the Bible, in every book, go to chapter 3, and start at verse 17. And I wrote down everything that I learned at 3:17 in those waking moments. For several weeks I did it, and I wrote everything that I could learn. And one of the last things I remember hearing God say was, I set before you life and death, blessings and curses. Choose life that your family might live. And what I understood was, I'm not giving you any other ideas. I've given you plenty, and you start them and you stop, and you start and you stop, and you don't see anything through to the end. So if you don't do this one, it's a choice to die. Now, whether that meant an actual physical death or to live in lack for the rest of my life. And that's when I made the promise, God, if this thing that you've given me, if it will make me successful, I'll tell everybody. And so that's what kept me up late nights writing this book, even knowing that I was going to get to tell people who I was never going to meet about what they could do if they believed.
So Mignon, talk to me a little bit more about the coaching side, because you're clearly someone who, how we define circling back is coming back after you've had a successful business, as you're having a successful business, to help others do the same thing. So talk to us a little bit about your coaching philosophy, what it looks like, who it's for, what that entire program is.
I believe that the voice inside of your head that's telling you that you can't is the liar. And I just want to help other people find their voice in whatever business that they want to make. And I just believe that we all have been given a measure of something. And so I've been helping, especially women, to find that space. And so I just want to help them start. I've been getting calls from literally around the globe telling me that they want to work with me, or how did you do it? And so I just want other moms like me who are looking for, whether it's field trip money or they're just looking for a way to make ends meet, to know that you can do it, that all you have is all you need to get from where you are to where it is that you want to be. So I started out with just a little texting community where people can text me their thoughts and go back and forth with me. And then in the process, we created a made from scratch experience where we're helping other women write their own made from scratch stories. So I'm really excited about the takeaways that they'll get. And then ultimately a conference is coming soon where they'll be able to come come and interact with this community that we're building right now.
So your coaching, your mentorship, what does that look like?
So I am inviting people into the space. Listen, they have been pounding the pavement and knocking on the door saying, we want more of Mignon Francois. We need mentorship, we need guidance, we need leadership. And so for the very first time, I'm answering the call to meet them exactly where they are. So I'm coaching, I'm mentoring, I'm helping people to start and see their businesses come to fruition. And they start that just by texting into my community and then following on Instagram and tapping in. Those are the first touch points for them to join my community. And then from there, we start advising and helping them to grow. So I've got other cupcakeries that I'm helping, around the world, and just other kinds of service businesses. And, I've been giving in a philanthropic way to a lot of other programs. And so now this is my opportunity to create what I want to be a part of.
And the Cupcake Collection is growing.
Yeah.
Opening new locations.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Adding a different layer to things. And so how has that process been, adding those stores, which you mentioned you bake in each one? How has that stretched and challenged you? Have you supplemented your team to take on that new venture? What does that look like?
That has been one of the hardest things I've ever had to do to this point, because now my son has come home and he has taken on the challenge of leading the operation while I go out and do new things. After 15 years working every single day in that store, my children wanted something for me, and that was rest. And so they took on the project. And he had been working for a really big real estate company running malls in America as one of the youngest leaders on the team. And he came home with that experience in his pocket and began to lead. And there were so many times that they would say, we like how Dylan does it better. And I'm like, well, that means you don't like me, And so he took it on and began to say, Mom, I think Nashville has grown to such a place that we can't get anywhere in 15 minutes anymore because traffic is just too bad. So we decided to blanket Nashville with Cupcake Collections. And that's been him. It's been so hard for me, because this is a layer of trust that I've never had to relinquish to anybody else. It was always just me and God. Like, God, what is it you want me to do? And follow my gut into it. Now I'm following my children and praying that they're praying as they move forward. But now we're 4 locations in Nashville. In a matter of, it was a lot of planning to get there. It took us, I think, 2 years of planning, but they've just opened within the matter of the last maybe 6 months. We spent time building them and everything. So we just introduced Hendersonville in January, end of January, beginning of February, and then we introduced Lenox Village a couple of weeks after that, February, March. And our food truck, Joy, which we had one of the first food trucks in Nashville several years ago, back in 2010, the very first dessert food truck in the city. And then when our cupcake bus died, we kind of exited. But a lot of the rules and the way that food trucks are handled in Nashville were written with our help, because we were, us and Mas Tacos, we were the only ones out there at the time. So we reintroduced her back to the market, and we call her Joy because we bring joy to you wherever we go. So, yeah, we have 4 locations now, including Germantown, which is our original flagship.
And so it's been 17 years, you said, since?
It's been 17 years for me. The store will be 16 in November.
17 since doing a bake sale.
Yep.
So, if you could predict, or what do you think the next 17?
I love this.
When I have you back on this show in 17 years, what are we talking about?
In 17 years, you'll see my face on more than just a book. I'm going to be on cake mix boxes in the grocery store. Within the next 17 years, Cupcake Collections will be a household name in America. And I'll be sitting at the helm as one of the first African-American women to ever lead a food business in this country. And I'm excited, a food corporation, I would say. One of the things that I feel saddened by is how much still needs to happen, how much progress still needs to happen in our country. And I believe that it's not lost on me that I am my ancestors' wildest dreams. To know that my father was born on a sugarcane plantation and to be growing wealth and creating a legacy in the same industry that my ancestors weren't given free enterprise is the fuel that keeps me running. And so I plan to make my mark on this country. I plan to make my mark on the world, and we're kind of already doing that.
I'd say so.
With our partnership with FedEx as we ship them nationwide.
Excellent.
So while there are other cakes that you might be able to have, I think the way that we're doing ours is just a little bit sweeter, and that was a pun intended.
Good. I think you're clearly someone who has circled back in terms of starting your business, growing it to a point where it can influence others, both through the written word and through the time you're putting into other entrepreneurs. Thank you for that, and thank you for sharing your story with us today.
So, Sam, last year I got the wonderful honor of being Nashpreneur of the Year.
That's right.
And I cried my little eyes out because I was completely cut off guard that this was happening. I thought I was just speaking at this event that the chamber was hosting. But I got a little clue that something was happening for me as you told this amazing story that I hope that you would share with my audience. I'm just blown away by it.
I had the extreme honor to present you with the Nashville Award last year. I had received it the year before, so I know exactly how important and special that is to be honored like that from your own hometown and where you live and where you've grown a business. And so, the story that came to mind, so I moved into Germantown in 2004, the summer of 2004. And I grew up in Nashville, but had never really been there and thought it was this awesome neighborhood. And so lived on 7th Avenue and loved to go for walks and jogs and met some friends in the neighborhood. And they were like, we should start a coffee shop. This was before there was any kind of coffee shop. I think Germantown Cafe was the only restaurant maybe in that radius at the time. Mad Platter, of course, too. Monell's was still there, but man, where can you just hang out and get a cup of coffee? And so 2 guys on my street who none of us had any experience in starting a business and would get together, have some beers every other couple weeks. And we're like, let's do it. Where are we going to do it? We got to do it in Germantown. And then on 6th Avenue, there was this house that a friend of mine looked up. He called a realtor and it was for sale. And I think it was like $130,000, $150,000. We were like, let's make an offer on it. And this is when, Germantown's was still seemingly affordable. Although for us, we were like, I was working at an hourly job at a hotel. This is my first job out of college. And the one guy was a nurse practitioner and one guy, I don't know what he did. So we formed an LLC and we made an offer on this house. And I think we offered like $75,000, thinking we were like, no problem. Which not to mention, if they had said yes, I had no idea how I would have come up with my share of that. I did not have that. And so it was like, no, got rejected. We're like, do we do more? And again, in the meantime, we're looking up on eBay, coffee bean roasters, and just, again, no business doing this. And the story I told last year, which I still think is true, is that the house was not meant for us. It was impossible. But as if someone knew, this house isn't for jesters, it's for a queen, is the story that I told. And I think that's true. And not that, good Lord, if we had bought it, it would have been right on the market a week later, I'm sure. But there's 1,000 stories like that where, in your case, again, your faith is a clear example of how things have worked out. And so I was so proud to tell that story. I was so thankful that we didn't get the house. We wouldn't have done anything with it, but that it was there when you needed it, when this idea needed it, when the world needed it, to become the Cupcake Collection.
Yeah, thank you. That was so amazing. I didn't know when I got it that that's what it was going to be. I bought it to raise my family there. I didn't know that it was going to meet my needs as far as, a business was concerned. But it was there that the idea for the Cupcake Collection was born. And so I needed that house as much as that house needed me. So thank you for sharing that.
Well, I'm so glad when you see those things, especially when you live in a community and you love your community. I remember once my daughter was born, walking over there, going over there on my own. I would take people there because it was one of the few places I think that served community coffee out of New Orleans. And so I would have friends from Louisiana who were visiting or in town. And I was like, let me take you to this place. And so I was like, you got to get a cupcake. You can't just get coffee there. But yeah, it was such a service, still is such a service to that neighborhood, as you pointed out, as it's growing. But all these connections, I love them. And now you and I are going to co-chair the Next Awards.
Yeah, I'm so excited about that. Like, this is going to be the best Next Awards ever.
It's going to be fun.
I truly am excited to have been a part of the narrative that we got to decide what Nashville was going to be, and that is a place for people to come and grow business. You don't come to Nashville just to play music. You come to Nashville to make business happen.
That's right.
And so this Next Awards, I believe it's going to be a huge thing in the world. And hopefully one day it's going to be televised and everything else. And, people are looking forward to coming to it. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you, friend.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this latest episode of Circle Back. As a reminder, each Circle Back episode is brought to you through the generosity of the Beth and Randy Chase family. And be sure to subscribe and learn more about these podcasts at ec.co/circleback.